Hey folks, how you doing? All right, good to be with you. Uh, I made a statement on my last video, and I said something that like ideas are unreal. Yeah. Well, that sort of figures into what I'm going to talk about today. Now we have, let's say, the great God. Great God in heaven, wherever you want to place him at. Okay, a great God. But now it is also said that this God knows everything. He knows all, sees all, hears all. You know what I mean? Know what we're thinking, and so forth and so on. Okay. Let's say that that's true. Okay. But if he knows all, then this brings us into a true reality state. And in such a state, people do not think. In such a state, people do not formulate ideas because they know. If it is known, you don't have to think about it. You don't have to formulate ideas. You know. That knowing is a true reality state. Okay? And, well, people enter into this state probably quite often, momentarily, you know. So let's say a person enters into this state for let's say, a half hour or so. While in this state, the person is not thinking, not formulating ideas, and the person is also conserving energy. He conserves energy in this state, probably because he's not thinking. Thinking and formulating ideas, etc., burns a lot of energy. The brain burns a lot of energy. Okay? And so, let's take a runner. A person who jogs, runs, you know what I mean? It has been said about the runner that they say themselves that they enter into a certain state while they're running. You know what I mean? Well, when they enter into this state, okay, they're actually not thinking, they're not formulating ideas, they're just running. Okay? Now, if a person runs, let's say, 8 miles per day, he knows the distance he's traveling, etc. He knows that at a certain point he starts feeling a little tired, etc., etc. Okay? Because he does it every day, you know? So now, let's say that the person enters into this reality state, but no thinking is going on, no formulation of ideas. He enters into a state and he might remain in that state for, let's say, half an hour, you see. And he will realize that during this hour or half hour, after he reaches a certain point and comes out of the state, comes out of that reality state, he had noticed that, well, I should be a little tired here. But because he knows now he has reached a certain point and is running. But he doesn't feel tired. Conservation of energy. So we conserve energy when we're in this state. And some runners are aware of this, you see. And they have practiced on this thing where they can, during the course of their running, they can go into this state and conserve energy. And stay on course. You don't go off course. They say, well, the spirit takes over. This is how some traditions explain it. Because it happens, you know what I mean? So let's take a football player. He's out on the field playing football and he makes a miraculous play. Wow. And his buddies congratulate him and all that. You know what I mean? But thinking back on himself, he might say, well, yeah, but how did I do that? He's not aware. You know what I mean? How did I do that? Because he went into a reality state. We would say, well, the spirit took over. Okay, and he went on and done it. It's the same as if a person goes into shock. Let's say they're in an automobile accident, and a person gets out and wow, he runs over, sees somebody pinned under a car, and he lifts the car. We heard of things like this. That person, when that person did that, he didn't think about doing it, he just did it. He entered into a reality state and picked the car up. He didn't think about it, you know. Sometimes we are told about certain things, don't think about it, just do it. You know what I mean? In other words, they say, and enter into a reality state, you know. And so, well, people try, but people who do this intentionally are usually trained to do it. You know, or someone trained them, or they trained themselves by practicing and so forth and so on. So we enter into these reality states, and these states are just the opposite of unreality, of course. Okay? And we see that we don't think in these states. We don't formulate ideas, you see, because ideas and thinking are of the world of unreality, you see. So now, when we go back, okay, and think about, let's say, the early humans, okay, according to physiology, okay, the study of physiology, the humans, the early humans, didn't have a cerebral cortex. Therefore, they didn't think and they didn't formulate ideas. Assuming that they didn't have any cerebral cortex. They also call it the neocortex because it's the last part of the brain to form. That's the top part. Okay? So they call it, well, the new part of the brain. Neo meaning new. So, the early humans didn't have it. How did they survive? They knew the way. They relied on knowing, not thinking, not formulating ideas, because they didn't have the cerebral cortex. It came later. Evidently their brains were, or their skull and brain was smaller. So some folks say, well, you know, some of the early fossils, you know, the brain was smaller. And people tend to say, well, they weren't human. Well, they may have been, they were human, but they just didn't have the cerebral cortex. But when the cerebral cortex started growing in, the skull expanded, it grew in order to accommodate the growth of this new brain, the cerebral cortex, our thinking brain. Okay? And so they were involved in knowledge. So therefore, they were closer to a true state. They were dealing with knowledge. They were dealing with reality, the spiritual realm. Okay? Where the spirit is reality. Okay. So now we have these folks who try to go back, to return to that state of our ancient ancestors. And so when a person says that, for example, he climbed this mountain, And at the top of this mountain, there was a great lake. And he looked down into this lake, and it was all clear. Nothing could hide there. Okay. So he's here entering into, or at least getting a glimpse of a reality state. No thinking, no formulation of ideas. There were no humans there either. Because we, the human, we formulate ideas and we think. Okay. So people try to go back to these, to reality. They try to go back to a true reality state. And they do their spiritual exercises. And when they go back to this true reality state, they get into that state. They conserve energy. Just like the runner who was running down, running the race. He conserves energy. And when he enters into that state, thinking and formulating ideas burns energy. The brain burns more energy when people's into this thinking and stuff. So now, when a person is doing certain, let's say, spiritual exercises like yoga exercises, he or she shuts the cerebral cortex down. And the first humans didn't have one. Okay. So when we want to go back, okay, to early times, we shut the cerebral cortex down. We don't think. We don't formulate ideas because they are not true reality states. So we say, well, yeah, ideas are not truly real. They are unreal. Thinking is unreal. Knowing is true and real. So this gets us into the idea of intelligence. Is intelligence true and real? Intelligence is for this life. To help us think, figure things out in this life. Think, formulate ideas in this life. Beyond this life, beyond this life where you don't even need to think, like that great God in heaven that knows all, he doesn't have to think. Think of what? He knows it all. You see? So this great God in heaven, or then it would be a true reality state. A state that we humans can enter. And if we really practice these things, we'll be able to enter such a state at will. But then there's always the question. You know what I mean? Why? Well, it has to do with, of course, knowing. Okay? Knowledge. And that's another reason why people want to enter into this state. But here we use intelligence. But people opt to use intelligence and get into complexity as opposed to simplicity, the simplicity of the true reality state. That is a state of knowing, etc. Okay, folks, have a good one, and I'll be getting back with you soon. All right, bye.